The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Ethan Cole stepped onto the deck of Vareth Prime for the first time. The station was enormous. It stretched out in every direction like a small city floating in space. Lights blinked on distant towers. Ships moved slowly in the docking areas. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds walked the corridors, spoke in strange languages, and went about their daily lives. Ethan was 22 years old. He had grown up in a small town in Ohio, joined the military at 18, and had never imagined he would one day stand on an alien space station at the edge of known space. But here he was, one of the first human cadets ever accepted into the Galactic Coalition Academy. Behind him, 4 other humans stepped off the shuttle. Mira Santos was the first. She was a few years older than Ethan, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid and calm eyes that never seemed to miss anything. She had been a field medic before joining the program. She nodded at Ethan, but said nothing. Words were not always necessary between them. Next came Daniel Price, a tall man with broad shoulders and an easy smile that hit a sharp mind. Then Sophie Grant, small and quick, who moved like she was always ready to run or fight. Finally, there was Kevin Liu, the youngest of them, quiet and thoughtful, who had been a communications specialist back on Earth. They stood together on the deck, 5 humans in a sea of aliens, and waited. A Karathi officer approached them. The Karathi were reptilian beings, tall and heavily built, with thick scales that ranged from deep green to almost black. This one stood nearly 7 feet tall and wore the uniform of the Academy with obvious pride. His yellow eyes moved over the human group with what might have been curiosity or might have been dismissal. It was hard to tell. "You are the Earth delegation," he said. It was not a question. "I am Lieutenant Vorath. I will escort you to orientation." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Ethan replied. He kept his voice calm and respectful. They had been trained for this. They knew they would be watched, judged, measured from the moment they arrived. Vorath turned and walked away without another word. The humans followed. The corridors of Vareth Prime were wide and busy. Ethan saw species he recognized from the briefings, and many he did not. The insectoid Vrenkai moved in small groups, their hard shells clicking as they walked, their multiple limbs folded with military precision. The Morvathi passed by in pairs, their 4 arms gesturing as they spoke in low voices. There were others, too. Beings with fur, with feathers, with skin that changed color as they moved. The galaxy was vast and strange, and humanity was very new to it. They reached the orientation hall after a long walk. It was a massive room, built like an amphitheater, with seats rising up on all sides around a central platform. Hundreds of cadets were already seated. The humans were directed to a section near the back, and Ethan noticed that no other species sat nearby. Whether this was by design or by choice, he could not say. Admiral Thesic took the platform. He was Karathi, like Vorath, but older and larger. His scales had faded to a dusty gray, and old scars marked his face and arms. He moved with the confidence of someone who had fought many battles and won most of them. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the hall. "Welcome to the Academy," he began. "You have come from many worlds. You have different bodies, different minds, different histories. But you have come here for the same reason. You wish to serve. You wish to protect. You wish to become warriors." He paused and let his gaze sweep across the room. "The Coalition has maintained peace in this region of space for 3,000 years. That peace was not given to us. It was earned. It was earned by warriors who bled and died so that others might live in safety. Here, you will learn to be such warriors. You will be tested. Many of you will fail. Those who succeed will join a tradition older than most of your civilizations." Thesic went on. He spoke of the history of the Academy, of the famous battles and legendary soldiers it had produced. He spoke of the Karathi, who bred warrior castes from birth and trained them from the moment they could walk. He spoke of the Vrenkai, whose bodies were living weapons with natural armor and venomous claws. He spoke of the Morvathi, whose forearms made them deadly in close combat, and who learned to fight before they learned to speak. Then he came to Earth. "Our newest member world," Thesic said. His tone was neutral, carefully diplomatic. "Earth has no recorded warrior traditions in the files submitted by their government, no biological advantages suited for combat, no history of interstellar conflict. They are a young species, and we welcome them to learn from our more experienced members." A soft sound moved through the hall. It might have been whispers. It might have been laughter. The alien cadets looked at the small group of humans with expressions that ranged from pity to amusement to simple disinterest. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Mira's hand touched his arm briefly. A warning. A reminder. Not yet. Not here. The orientation continued. There were announcements about schedules, rules, expectations. Ethan listened, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about what the Admiral had said. No warrior traditions, no biological advantages, no history of conflict. It was a lie, of course. Not a complete lie, but close enough. Earth's diplomats had made a choice when humanity first made contact with the Coalition. They had decided to present a certain image: peaceful, cooperative, civilized. They had talked about art and science and exploration. They had shown the best of humanity and hidden the rest. They had not talked about the wars, the endless bloody wars that filled human history from beginning to end. They had not talked about the weapons humanity had built, weapons capable of burning entire cities to ash in seconds. They had not talked about the trenches and the battlefields and the genocides. They had not talked about how humanity had nearly destroyed itself more than once and had only survived through luck and stubbornness. Ethan understood why the diplomats had made that choice. He even agreed with it in a way. Humanity wanted to be seen as something better than what it had been. But standing in that hall, surrounded by aliens who saw him as weak and harmless, Ethan wondered if the diplomats had made a mistake. The orientation ended. The cadets filed out, separating into groups based on species and assignment. The humans walked together, a small island in a sea of strange faces. "Well," Daniel said quietly, "that was fun." "They think we are nothing," Sophie replied. Her voice was flat, but her eyes were angry. "Let them think it," Mira said. "For now." Ethan said nothing. He just walked and watched and waited. They had come here to prove something, not to the aliens, to themselves, to show that humanity belonged among the stars, not as visitors or students, but as equals. It would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But Ethan Cole had never been afraid of hard work. None of them had. That was why they were here. The quiet arrival was over. The real test was about to begin. 3 weeks passed at the academy, and the humans learned their place. It was not a good place. Every morning, the cadets gathered for physical training. The Karate ran drills that showed off their strength and speed. The Vrenkai practiced combat forms that turned their natural weapons into deadly tools. The Morvathi sparred with all 4 arms, moving so fast that Ethan could barely follow their movements. The humans were given different tasks. They ran laps around the training yard. They lifted weights that were considered light by academy standards. They practiced basic combat moves that the instructors called foundational, but everyone knew meant simple. Instructor Deleth oversaw their training. He was Morvathi, with gray-brown skin and 4 arms that never seemed to stop moving. His face was hard to read, covered in small plates that shifted when he spoke. He watched the humans with something that looked like boredom. "Again," he would say when they finished a drill. "Slower this time. Watch your form." It was not cruel, exactly. It was worse than that. It was dismissive. Deleth did not push them hard because he did not think there was any point. They were humans. They were weak. They were here to fill a requirement, not to become real soldiers. During combat simulations, the humans were always assigned to support roles: medical backup, communications, supply management. Important jobs, yes, but not the jobs that warriors did. While Karathi squads led attacks and Vrenkai units held defensive lines, the humans sat in back rooms and watched screens. "We are being wasted," Daniel said one night in their quarters. He was lying on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. "They brought us all this way to make us into clerks." "They brought us here because they had to," Kevin replied. He was sitting at a small desk, reviewing the next day's assignments. "Earth is a member world now. They have to accept our cadets. They never said they had to respect us." "So what do we do?" Sophie asked. She was doing push-ups on the floor, steady and controlled. She did them every night, hundreds of them, even though no one was watching. "Just accept it?" Ethan was standing by the window, looking out at the stars. He had been quiet all evening, thinking. "No," he said. "We don't accept it. We change it." The next morning, Ethan approached Instructor Deleth before training began. The Morvathi looked down at him with all four eyes, his arms folded across his chest. "Cadet Cole, what do you want?" "Permission to attempt the Advanced Obstacle Course, Instructor." Deleth's facial plates shifted. It might have been surprise. "The Advanced Course is designed for species with superior physical capabilities. The current record is held by a Karathi who completed it in 4 standard minutes. You would injure yourself." "I understand, Instructor. I would still like to try." "Why?" Ethan met his gaze steadily. "Because I need to know what I can do, and so do you." Deleth was silent for a long moment. Around them, other cadets had stopped what they were doing. They were watching, waiting to see what would happen. "Very well," Deleth said finally. "You may attempt the course. Medical teams will be standing by." The Advanced Obstacle Course was a nightmare made physical. It began with a climbing wall 30 meters high, covered in holds that were spaced for beings with longer reach than humans. After that came a series of balance beams suspended over a pit, followed by a crawl through a tunnel filled with mud and obstacles. Then there were walls to vault, ropes to swing across, and a final sprint through a field of moving barriers that could knock a careless runner off their feet. Ethan stood at the starting line. He wore standard training gear, nothing special. Around the course, dozens of alien cadets had gathered to watch. He could feel their eyes on him. He could hear their whispers. The human is actually going to try. This should be entertaining. How long before he falls? Ethan pushed it all away. He focused on his breathing. He focused on the course ahead. He had studied it for days, watching recordings, memorizing every obstacle. He knew he could not match the Karathi for strength or the Vrenkai for speed, but he did not need to be stronger or faster. He just needed to be good enough. The signal sounded. Ethan ran. The climbing wall was brutal. His arms burned after the first 10 meters. The holds were too far apart, forcing him to jump and stretch in ways his body was not designed for. But he kept moving. He found a rhythm, pushing through the pain, refusing to stop. He reached the top and dropped onto the first balance beam. His legs were shaking, but he forced them steady. One step at a time. Don't look down. Don't think about falling. Just move. The tunnel was the worst. It was dark and cramped, and the mud sucked at his hands and knees. Something cut his palm on a hidden edge, and blood mixed with the dirt. He kept crawling. The pain was just information. It told him he was still alive, still moving. He emerged from the tunnel and hit the walls. Vault, land, run. His lungs were on fire now. Every breath was a struggle, but he could see the end of the course ahead. The moving barriers caught him twice. The first time, he rolled with the impact and kept his feet. The second time, he went down hard, his shoulder slamming into the ground. For a moment, he lay there, gasping, wondering if he could get up. Then he got up. He crossed the finish line and stopped, bent over, hands on his knees, fighting to breathe. Blood dripped from his torn palm. His shoulder throbbed. One of his fingers was bent at a wrong angle, dislocated during the climb. He reached down, grabbed the finger, and popped it back into place. The pain was sharp and bright, but he did not make a sound. The watching cadets had fallen silent. Instructor Deleth approached slowly. He looked at the timer, then at Ethan. 6 minutes and 43 seconds, he said. Not a record, but faster than predicted. Yes, instructor. You are injured. Yes, instructor. You continued despite the injuries. Yes, instructor. Deleth's arms unfolded. His facial plates shifted in a pattern Ethan had not seen before. Why? Ethan straightened up. His body screamed at him, but he forced himself to stand tall. Because stopping was not an option, instructor. Deleth studied him for a long moment. The other cadets watched in silence. Return to medical, Deleth said finally. Get your injuries treated. Report for training tomorrow. Yes, instructor. Ethan walked away. He did not look back at the watching aliens. He did not need to see their faces to know that something had changed. Later, in the medical bay, Mira found him while a machine bonded his torn skin back together. You made a statement today, she said. I made a point, he replied. There's a difference. Mira smiled slightly. The whole station is talking about it, the human who finished the advanced course. I did not break any records. No, but you finished. Nobody expected that. She paused. They're starting to wonder what else they got wrong about us. Ethan looked at his healing hand. The skin was pink and new, the pain fading to a dull ache. Good, he said. Let them wonder. They had come here to prove something. Today was just the beginning. That night, Ethan could not sleep. His body was exhausted, but his mind would not rest. He left the quarters quietly, careful not to wake the others, and made his way to the observation deck. The deck was a large room with wide windows that looked out into space. It was empty at this hour. Most cadets were sleeping, preparing for another day of training. Ethan found a seat near the window and sat down, staring at the stars. There were so many of them. Thousands visible from this window alone, and billions more beyond. Somewhere out there, in a small corner of the galaxy, was Earth, his home, a world that suddenly seemed very far away. The door opened behind him. He did not turn around. I figured you would be here, Mira said. She walked over and sat down beside him. You should be resting. Could not sleep. The pain? No, just thinking. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Mira did not push. She never did. That was one of the things Ethan appreciated about her. She understood that sometimes people needed quiet more than they needed words. Finally, she spoke. You scared them today. The other cadets, I mean. They did not know what to make of it. Ethan nodded slowly. Good. The Karathi squad leader was asking questions about human physiology. He wanted to know if we feel pain differently than other species. What did you tell him? I told him we feel it just fine. We just do not let it stop us. Ethan smiled slightly. That is not entirely accurate. Close enough? Mira paused. They still do not understand us, though. They think today was a trick, some kind of special ability or hidden advantage. They cannot accept that you just refused to quit. Of course they cannot. It does not fit their understanding. Ethan turned to look at her. The Karathi are warriors because they are bred for it. From birth, their society sorts them into castes. Warriors, workers, thinkers. If you are born into the warrior caste, you fight. It is not a choice. It is what you are. And the Vrenkai? Evolution made them weapons, armor, venom, strength. They are dangerous because their bodies are dangerous. Again, not a choice. Just biology. Mira nodded. And humans? Ethan turned back to the window. Humans are different. We are not bred for war. We are not built for it. We have soft skin, weak bones, no claws or venom. By any measure, we should be prey, not predators. But we are not prey. No, we are not. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Do you know what the diplomats told the coalition when we made first contact? I saw the reports. They talked about our art, our science, our exploration. They showed them music and paintings and the great works of literature. Yes, they showed the best of us. The beautiful parts. The parts we are proud of. Ethan's voice grew harder. They did not show the other parts. Mira understood. Of course she did. She was human, too. She carried the same history in her blood. The wars, she said quietly. All of them. Every single one, from the first caveman who picked up a rock to kill his neighbor, to the bombs that could destroy whole cities in a flash of light. They did not talk about the trenches of the First World War, where millions died for a few miles of mud. They did not talk about the second, where we built machines specifically designed to kill as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible. Or the genocides, Mira added, the ethnic cleansings, the famines we caused on purpose to starve our enemies. Yes, all of it. The diplomats looked at our history and decided to hide it. They were ashamed, I think. They wanted the galaxy to see us as something better than what we have been. The stars hung in the window, cold and distant. Somewhere among them, species were being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling. The galaxy did not care about human shame or human pride. It simply existed. They made a mistake, Mira said. Did they? Yes. She turned to face him fully. The Karathi and the Vrenkai and all the others, they think they understand war. They think they understand violence, but they do not. Not really. They fight because they must, because nature or society tells them to. They have never fought because they chose to. They have never stood at the edge of total destruction and pulled themselves back. We almost did not pull back, Ethan reminded her. More than once. We came within minutes of ending everything. But we did pull back, that is the point. We had the power to destroy ourselves completely, and we chose not to. That is not weakness. That is strength. Ethan considered her words. She was right, he knew. There was something in humans that the other species did not have. Something that could not be bred or evolved. It was the ability to choose, to decide in any moment what kind of being they would be. The Karathi warriors were dangerous because they had no choice but to fight. Humans were dangerous because they could choose peace and still be capable of war. The violence was always there, waiting, held in check by will alone. They will learn, Ethan said finally. Sooner or later, they will understand what we are. Will they fear us? Maybe. Probably. If they are smart, they will. Mira was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, Is that what you want? For them to fear us? Ethan thought about it carefully. No, he said. I want them to respect us. I want them to see us as partners, as equals. But if fear is the first step toward respect, then I will accept it. That is very human of you. Yes, it is. They sat together in the darkness, watching the stars. The station hummed around them, thousands of beings sleeping and working and living their lives, unaware of the conversation happening on the observation deck. What do we do now? Mira asked. We keep going. We train harder. We prove ourselves in every way we can. And when the time comes, when they finally give us a real test, we show them everything. Everything? Everything. The good and the bad, the beauty and the horror. All of human history, written in blood and fire and stubborn refusal to die. Ethan stood up. His body still ached from the obstacle course, but the pain felt distant now, unimportant. They asked why Earth breeds no warriors. When the time comes, we will give them an answer. Mira stood up beside him. And what answer is that? Ethan looked out at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, his ancestors had fought and died so that he could stand here, in this moment, on a station among the stars. They had killed each other for thousands of years, and somehow, against all odds, they had survived. They had reached for the sky, and they had made it. The answer, he said, is that Earth does not need to breed warriors. Every human is already one. We just choose when to let it show. Mira smiled. It was not a soft smile. It was the smile of someone who understood exactly what he meant. Then let us show them, she said. They left the observation deck together and walked back to their quarters. Tomorrow would bring more training, more dismissal, more underestimation. But that was fine. They could wait. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was capable of, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The midterm evaluation came 8 weeks into the training cycle. Every cadet knew it was coming. It was the largest test of the year, a full-scale simulation that would determine rankings and future assignments. Those who performed well would advance. Those who did not would be sent home. The scenario was simple in concept, but complex in execution. A space station had been attacked by a large pirate fleet. Coalition forces had to defend the station, protect the civilians inside, and repel the invaders. Each squad would be assigned a role based on their species and capabilities. Ethan knew what role the humans would receive before the assignments were even posted. Rearguard medical support. They would sit in a back room, treat wounded soldiers as they came in, and stay far away from the actual fighting. He was not wrong. Medical Bay 7, Instructor Deleth announced, reading from his list. Human squad will provide emergency treatment and coordinate evacuation of casualties. Daniel made a sound of frustration under his breath. Sophie's hands curled into fists at her sides. Kevin just shook his head slowly. Mira touched Ethan's arm. We knew this would happen. Yes, he said. We did. They reported to Medical Bay 7 as ordered. It was a small room near the back of the simulation area, filled with beds and medical equipment. Screens on the walls showed feeds from cameras throughout the station. They could watch the battle, but they would not be part of it. The simulation began. The Karathi vanguard pushed forward immediately, as their doctrine demanded. They were aggressive, powerful, trained to attack and overwhelm. For the first 20 minutes, it seemed to work. The enemy forces fell back under the assault. Then things started to go wrong. The Karathi had pushed too far, too fast. They had left gaps in their lines, openings that a smart enemy could exploit. The simulated pirates were not real, but the Academy's computers were very good at creating realistic opponents. The enemy saw the gaps and struck. At the same time, the Vrenkai flanking force ran into unexpected resistance. A hidden enemy position opened fire, pinning them down. They could not advance, and they could not retreat without exposing their backs to enemy fire. Within 30 minutes, the defensive line had collapsed. Simulated hostiles were flooding into the station's interior, pushing toward the civilian sectors. Squads that had been assigned to hold key positions found themselves surrounded and cut off. And then the enemy reached Medical Bay 7. Ethan saw them coming on the screens, a full squad of simulated pirates moving through the corridors with weapons ready. They were heading straight for the medical bay. We need to evacuate, Kevin said. His voice was steady, but Ethan could see the tension in his shoulders. Standard protocol says we fall back to secondary position. Standard protocol assumes someone else is handling the fighting, Sophie replied. She was already moving toward the door, checking her weapon. Look at those screens. There is no one else. Everyone is either pinned down or retreating. She was right. The feeds showed chaos throughout the station, squads scattered, formations broken, the careful battle plan falling apart. If they evacuated, there was nowhere safe to evacuate to. Instructor DeLeth's voice crackled over the communications system. Human squad, evacuate to secondary position. Acknowledge. Ethan looked at his team. They looked back at him. Negative, instructor, he said into his communicator. Secondary position is not secure. We are holding here. There was a pause. When DeLeth spoke again, his voice was sharp. Cadet Cole, you are not trained for combat operations. Follow your orders. With respect, instructor, our orders are going to get us killed. The enemy is between us and secondary position. We either hold here or we die trying to run. Ethan moved toward the door. We choose to hold. He switched off the communicator before DeLeth could respond. Well, Daniel said, checking his own weapon, I guess we are doing this. Guess so, Mira replied. She was already organizing the medical supplies, preparing for what was coming. Try not to get shot. I only have so many hands. The enemy squad reached the corridor outside Medical Bay 7. Ethan counted 8 of them on the screen. Simulated opponents, yes, but the simulation was designed to feel real. The weapons fired stun rounds that hurt. The damage tracked by the computer was serious. If they lost, it would count against them just like a real defeat. Kevin, seal the rear entrance, Ethan ordered. Daniel, Sophie, take positions on either side of the main door. Mira, stay back and be ready. They moved without hesitation. 3 weeks of dismissal and underestimation had not broken them. It had sharpened them. They were ready. The first enemy came through the door fast, weapon raised. Daniel hit him from the side, grabbing the weapon arm and twisting. The simulated pirate went down. Stunned by his own weapon turned against him. The second and third came together. Sophie met them with a fury that surprised even Ethan. She was small, but she was fast, and she knew exactly where to strike. Throat, eyes, knees, the soft places that every species had. The pirates fell. More came. The doorway became a killing ground. Ethan fought beside his team, using every technique he had learned, every trick he had figured out. The pirates were bigger and stronger, but they expected medical personnel, not warriors. They were not prepared for what they found. When the ammunition ran low, they improvised. Medical tools became weapons. A bone setter became a club. A surgical laser became a cutting torch. They used furniture as shields and obstacles as traps. Mira did not stay in the back. She fought and treated wounds at the same time, pulling injured teammates to safety while covering fire kept the enemy back. When Daniel took a stun round to the shoulder, she had him back on his feet in seconds, the pain blocked by emergency medication. The fight lasted 12 minutes. It felt like hours. When it was over, 8 simulated pirates lay stunned or disabled on the floor of Medical Bay 7. The human squad was still standing, bloody, bruised, gasping for breath, but standing. Everyone alive? Ethan asked. Alive, Daniel confirmed, clutching his shoulder. Here, Sophie said. She had a cut above her eye that was bleeding freely. Still functional, Kevin reported. He was leaning against a wall, his face pale. Good. Ethan looked at the screens. The battle was still going on elsewhere, but something had changed. The enemy advance had slowed. Reinforcements were arriving. The line was stabilizing. 10 minutes later, a Karathi squad reached their position. The squad leader stopped in the doorway, staring at the scene. 8 enemy soldiers down. 5 humans still on their feet. The medical bay held. You held, the Karathi said. His voice was strange, uncertain. They told us medical support had been overrun. They were wrong, Ethan replied simply. The Karathi looked at the humans for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and moved on to secure the rest of the sector. When the simulation finally ended, the humans were still in Medical Base 7. They had not retreated. They had not evacuated. They had held their ground against everything the enemy threw at them. Mira sat down heavily on one of the beds, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion. "We did it," she said quietly. "Yes," Ethan agreed. He was looking at the screens, watching the replay of their defense. "We did." Daniel laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Think they noticed?" "They noticed," Sophie said. She was smiling despite the blood on her face. "Everyone noticed." She was right. Across the station, in command centers and observation rooms, the instructors had watched the impossible happen. A human squad, assigned to medical support, had held a position against a full enemy assault. They had watched the recordings. They had analyzed the tactics. They had seen humans fight with an adaptability and ferocity that did not match anything in their files. Something had changed. The question now was what came next. The summons came the next morning. Admiral Thesick wanted to see the human squad in his office, immediately. They walked through the corridors of the station together, 5 humans moving as one unit. The other cadets watched them pass. The looks were different now, less dismissive, more curious. Some looked almost nervous. Word had spread quickly about what had happened in Medical Bay 7. The recordings had been shared, analyzed, discussed. The human squad that was supposed to stay in the back and treat wounds had instead held a defensive position against overwhelming odds. Nobody knew quite what to make of it. Admiral Thesick's office was large and functional. One wall was covered with screens showing tactical data. Another displayed awards and honors from a long military career. The Admiral himself sat behind a wide desk, his gray scales catching the light as he moved. "Close the door," he said. "Sit." There were chairs arranged in front of the desk. The humans sat, maintaining formation even now. Thesick studied them for a long moment, his yellow eyes moving from face to face. "I have reviewed the recordings from yesterday's simulation," he began. "I have also reviewed your training records, your background files, and the diplomatic submissions provided by Earth's government when your species joined the coalition." He paused. His facial muscles shifted in what might have been a frown. "They do not match." Ethan remained still. "In what way, Admiral?" "Earth's submissions described your world as peaceful, a planet of scholars, artists, and explorers. A species that values cooperation and avoids conflict." Thesick leaned forward. "The beings I saw in those recordings were not peaceful. They were efficient, adaptive, and extremely violent. We did what was necessary, Admiral. You did more than that. My tactical analysts are still trying to understand how 5 cadets with no combat training held a position against a full assault squad. They are looking for tricks, for hidden advantages, for something that explains what they saw." "And what are they finding?" "Nothing." Thesick's voice was flat. "Nothing that fits their models. You are not stronger than other species. You are not faster. You have no natural weapons or armor. By every measure they use, you should have failed." Mira spoke up. "With respect, Admiral, perhaps the measures are wrong." Thesick turned his gaze to her. "Explain." "The Coalition has been training warriors for 3,000 years. In that time, you have developed theories and methods based on the species you know. The Karate fight one way because of their biology and culture. The Vrenkai fight another way because of theirs. Your training assumes that all species fit into categories that you understand." "And humans do not fit?" "No, Admiral, we do not." Ethan took over. "The diplomatic submissions were not wrong, Admiral. They were incomplete. Earth is a world of scholars and artists and explorers, but it is also a world of warriors. The two things are not separate. They never have been." Thesick was silent, waiting. "Human history is written in blood," Ethan continued. "We have been fighting each other since before we could write. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over nothing at all. We have built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet, and we have come within minutes of using them. More than once." Why did your diplomats hide this? Because they were ashamed. Because they wanted the galaxy to see us as something better than what we have been. They showed you our art and our science because those are the things we are proud of. They hid our wars because those are the things we wish we could forget. Thessic's claws tapped against his desk, a slow rhythm. So your species is violent. Many species are violent. That does not explain what I saw in the recordings. No, Admiral, it does not. Ethan stood up. The others rose with him. The Karathi are warriors because you are bred for it. Your society creates warrior castes from birth. You fight because it is what you are. The Vrenkai are warriors because evolution made them weapons. They fight because their bodies are designed for it. And humans? We are not bred for war. We are not built for it. Every violent impulse we have, we choose to act on. Every battle we fight, we choose to fight. Ethan's voice was steady and clear. That is what makes us dangerous, Admiral. Not biology, not training, choice. Thessic rose from his chair. He was much taller than any of the humans, his presence filling the room. But he did not seem threatening. He seemed thoughtful. When Earth's delegation asked why your world breeds no warriors, he said slowly, what would you say? Ethan met his gaze without flinching. I would say they are looking at one, Admiral. They have been looking at us since we arrived. They just did not recognize what they were seeing. He gestured to his squad mates. To Mira, who had fought and healed at the same time. To Daniel, who had kept fighting with a stunned shoulder. To Sophie, who had taken down opponents twice her size with nothing but skill and fury. To Kevin, who had held his position despite fear and pain. Every human is a warrior, Admiral. We just choose when to be one. You asked why Earth breeds no warriors. The answer is that we do not need to. The capacity for war is in all of us. It always has been. The room was very quiet. Thessic walked to the window and looked out at the stars. His scales shifted colors slightly, a sign of deep thought among Karathi. I have commanded warriors from over 200 species, he said without turning around. I have seen courage and strength and skill in many forms. I thought I understood what war was. What warriors were. He turned back to face them. I was wrong. Your species is something new, something we have not encountered before. A people who could destroy themselves utterly and chose not to. A people who carry war in their hearts, but do not let it rule them. Is that a problem, Admiral? No. A hint of something that might have been respect entered his voice. It is an opportunity. He walked back to his desk and sat down. Earth's diplomatic submissions will need to be revised. I will be recommending that the coalition receive a more complete picture of your species. Not to frighten them, but to ensure they understand who they are dealing with. We would welcome that, Admiral. I am also changing your training assignments. From now on, the human squad will participate in full combat exercises. You will train with our best instructors and face our most difficult challenges. His eyes glinted. I want to see what you can really do. Mira allowed herself a small smile. We will not disappoint you, Admiral. I suspect you will not. Thessic paused. One more thing. I asked what you would say when someone asks why Earth breeds no warriors. But that is not the real question. The real question is what Earth breeds instead. Ethan considered his answer carefully. Earth breeds survivors, Admiral. Beings who have faced extinction 100 times and refused to die. Beings who have stood at the edge of the abyss and chosen to step back. Beings who can be scholars and artists and explorers, and then in a single moment become something else entirely. And what is that something else? Whatever we need to be. Ethan's voice carried a weight that filled the room. That is what makes us human. That is what your analysts cannot quantify. The ability to adapt, to change, to become whatever the moment requires. Peaceful when peace is possible. Violent when violence is necessary, and always, always choosing. Thesic nodded slowly. I believe I am beginning to understand. We hope so, Admiral, because we did not come here to fail. We came here to show the galaxy that humanity belongs among the stars, not as guests, not as students, as equals. And as warriors? Ethan smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a species that had clawed its way up from nothing, survived everything the universe had thrown at it, and refused to stop reaching for more. When necessary, Admiral. When necessary. He and his squad left the office and walked out into the corridors of Verath Prime. The station hummed around them, full of life and activity. Cadets of 100 species went about their business, training for wars they might one day fight. The humans walked among them, 5 soft and fragile beings in a galaxy of claws and armor and venom. They looked weak. They looked harmless. They looked like nothing special at all. But appearances could be deceiving. Earth had sent its children to the stars, and the stars would learn to respect them. It might take time. It might take blood. It would certainly take sacrifice. But that was fine. Humanity had plenty of experience with all 3. They had come from a world that bred survivors, and survivors did not give up. Not ever. Not for anything. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson, and they would never forget it.